I paid off his high-interest credit card because he said it kept him up at night. I picked the cheaper apartment an hour from my job, so his shorter commute wouldn't kill his grind. I cooked most nights, covered most groceries, and told myself money didn't matter as long as we were happy. I listened when he complained the system was rigged against him, even while my paycheck quietly kept us afloat. When my bank offered us a better rate if we opened a joint account for bills, I thought it was the next step. I pictured us as a real team, saving together, planning together, building a life with both our names on it. I sat down with spreadsheets and color-coded goals, heart wide open, and showed him exactly what I'd saved for us. He glanced at the numbers, leaned back, and said, "I don't see why we need joint accounts. What's mine is mine. What's yours is manageable." In that moment, I finally understood who was really investing in our relationship and who was just cashing out. My name is Megan. I'm 30, a registered nurse in Boston, and if you'd asked anyone who knew me a year ago to describe me, they would have said things like responsible, organized, maybe a little intense about budgeting. I grew up in a house where one missed paycheck could mean the lights going off. My dad's construction jobs came and went. My mom worked nights at a nursing home and hid overdue bills under placemats. We never starved, but we were always one broken transmission away from disaster. So when I finally got my RN license, landed a job at a big teaching hospital, and watched a steady salary hit my account every 2 weeks, I made myself a promise. I would never live in panic about money again. And I would never use money as a weapon in love. That second part turned out to be trickier. I met Jason at a friend's birthday party at a bar in Back Bay. He was the loud one at the end of the table, making everyone laugh with stories about impossible clients and ridiculous sales quotas. He worked in business development for a tech company, code for sales, but he made it sound nobler. Convincing people to buy things they already need, he joked, with slightly inflated prices. We started talking over bad margaritas and worse nachos. He asked about my work. I told him stories about patients and night shifts. He listened in a way that felt rare. "You literally save lives," he said, eyes wide. "I'm just a glorified talker." That's so badass. No one had ever called my job that before. He asked for my number, texted the next day, and 2 weeks later, he was the person I wanted to tell everything to: the weird rash a patient had, the annoying thing my charge nurse said, the fact that my student loans felt like a second job. He had his own money traumas. His parents had filed for bankruptcy when he was in middle school. He told me how they'd fought about money until they split, how he'd sworn he'd be the rich one someday, just to prove life wrong. I understood that hunger. It made me soften around his edges. For the first year we dated, our finances were mostly invisible to each other. I paid my rent, he paid his. We traded dinners out. I Venmo'd him half when we took trips. He slipped me cash for groceries sometimes. It wasn't equal in dollars, but it felt equal in intention. When my lease ended and his roommate moved in with a girlfriend, moving in together felt like a practical next step. "We're always at one place or the other anyway," he said, scrolling apartment listings on his phone. "We might as well only be hemorrhaging rent in one direction." We found a 2-bedroom walk-up in Jamaica Plain, old hardwood floors, radiators that clanked like ghosts, a tiny patch of yard Jason immediately dubbed our future Grill Kingdom. The rent was steep, at least by the standards of my childhood, but normal for Boston. "I'll take care of more of it once my commission checks stabilize," he promised as we signed the lease. First year in sales is always rocky. I volunteered to put the utilities in my name because the hospital liked nurses with proof of address, and I was the one who'd be there more often between shifts. "You're the organized one," he said, kissing my forehead. "You can actually remember due dates." At first, it worked. We split the base rent, more or less. He grilled on weekends. I cooked on weekdays. We watched bad TV and argued about which cereal was superior. But money has a way of telling a story underneath the surface. His base salary was lower than mine, but his commission theoretically made up for it. The problem was that theoretically didn't line up neatly with due dates. "The quarter's back-end loaded," he'd say, handing me half his rent a week late. "Next month'll be bigger."
Some months it was.
Some months it wasn't. I covered the gaps without making a big deal. It felt petty to say, "You're short this month," when I was watching him genuinely stress over his numbers. "You're my safety net," he'd joke. "Just until I blow up." In my head, I tagged every extra grocery run, every utility bill that came out of my account, as temporary. That's what you do when you love someone and you're both building. The imbalance was emotional too, though I didn't have words for it yet. He talked about our future in big, sweeping gestures. When we have a house, when we take that Europe trip, when I put you in that Tesla you like. I talked about specifics, which neighborhoods I could commute from, how many kids I thought I could handle with my schedule, what saving for a down payment would actually look like. He'd pat my leg and say, "I love how you think about this stuff, so I don't have to." He said it like a compliment. I heard the beginning of a job description. About 2.5 years in, things changed at my hospital. They offered me a promotion into a nurse educator role, better hours, a slight pay bump, more responsibility. Fewer night shifts, more days in meeting rooms, teaching new staff. I was torn. I liked patient care. I also liked the idea of my back not giving out by 40. Jason was thrilled. "Are you kidding?"
"Take it," he said.
"Do you know how many people would kill for 9 to 5-ish? Plus money for the house fund." I promoted. I felt grown up. I also felt the weight of house fund, like a barbell I'd offered to pick up. Around the same time, my bank started sending us emails about household perks. One of them was a bonus interest rate if we opened a joint checking account for bills. It could make things easier, I said one Sunday morning, sliding my laptop toward him across the couch. Right now we're Venmoing back and forth like undergrads. One joint account for rent, utilities, groceries. We each transfer in our share every month.
Cleaner.
Fairer. He frowned, scrolling. "What's wrong with what we're doing now?" he asked.
"It works," I said.
"But it's messy. This would make everything transparent." "No more, I'll get you back next week. We'd both see what's coming out." He sat back.
"I don't know," he said.
"Joint accounts are serious. My parents had those. Look how that ended." "That ended because your dad opened secret cards and your mom stopped talking to him," I said gently. "Not because they had a shared checking account."
"Still," he said.
"Money makes people weird. I like our independence." "We can keep our personal accounts," I said. "This would just be for shared stuff." He didn't answer right away. I opened my own spreadsheet. How much of my monthly budget was going toward us? The numbers were telling. Over the last year, I'd contributed roughly 65% of our joint expenses. "I'm not showing you this to throw it in your face," I said. "I just want us to be on the same page. I feel better when things are clear. A joint account would help with that." He skimmed the sheet, barely. Then he leaned back, laced his fingers behind his head, and said the sentence that cracked everything open. "I don't see why we need joint accounts," he said. "What's mine is mine. What's yours is manageable." He said it with a half smile, like it was a joke. Like I should laugh. I didn't. The room went oddly quiet. Our fridge hummed. A car honked outside. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's kid was yelling about a lost toy. "What does that mean?" I asked carefully. He shifted, sensing the temperature change, but not yet understanding it. "Relax," he said. "I'm kidding. Mostly. I just don't like the idea of other people seeing my money." "Other people being me," I said. "Your partner of 3 years. The person you already live with." He rolled his eyes. "You know what I mean," he said. "My parents fought about money constantly. Joint accounts, joint debts, joint disasters. I promised myself I'd never give anyone that kind of power over me." I stared at him. "You don't trust me," I said. It wasn't a question. "It's not about trust," he countered. "It's about autonomy. You have yours, I have mine." "Autonomy is keeping separate savings," I said. "Autonomy is having your own credit card. Autonomy is not wanting to merge everything. Saying what's mine is mine. What's yours is manageable is about control." He winced and tried to backpedal. "Babe, come on," he said. It was a bad joke. "You're so literal sometimes." "Was it a joke?" I asked. Because it sounded like you just admitted you see my money as a resource for our life and yours as untouchable. He sighed, impatient now. Look, he said. You're better with money. You like budgeting. You like making little charts. That's your thing. I don't. I know if we had a joint account, you'd be checking it all the time, asking why I spent $50 at a bar or whatever. That's suffocating. I check everything now, I said. Because half the time when rent is due, you say, "Can I get you next week?" And I'm the one making sure the lights stay on. The difference is you don't see the work, you just enjoy the stability. He opened his mouth, closed it. I appreciate what you do, he said. Really? But I don't think marriage or whatever has to mean joining everything. My dad used to say, separate accounts, separate headaches. He was onto something. Your dad also disappeared for 3 months once because he forgot to pay the mortgage, I reminded him. Jason sucked in a breath. You're bringing him into this now? He asked. Low blow. I'm bringing him into this because you're using his trauma as a blueprint, I said. And in that blueprint, I'm your mom. The one holding everything together while you guard your little stash.
He flinched at that.
That's not fair, he repeated. Maybe not, I said. But it feels accurate. Silence settled between us, heavier this time. Joint accounts aside, I said, taking a breath, I need to know if you see our future as something we build together, or something you live in while I quietly subsidize the parts that aren't fun. He frowned. Of course I see it as together, he said. When my commissions really hit, you'll see. I'll cover more. I'll make up for everything. That's not what I asked, I said. Do you understand why it hurt to hear you say, what's yours is manageable? He shifted, eyes sliding away. I mean, your salary is steady, he said. It's reliable. Mine's volatile. We both know my upside is bigger. It just makes sense for me to keep my wins separate until I know they're real. Until you know they're real, I repeated. And where do I fit in that timeline? Do I only get access to the real part if we hit some milestone? Ring?
House. Kid.
He blew out a breath. Why are you making this so dramatic? He asked. I just said I don't want a joint account. That's not a crime. You also said what's mine is mine, I replied. Out loud. To my face. After I showed you how much of my manageable money has been keeping us afloat. His gaze flicked back to the spreadsheet he'd barely glanced at. How bad is it really? He asked. There it was. I turned the laptop back toward him and pointed. In the last 12 months, I said, voice steady. I've paid 65% of our shared expenses. That includes covering full rent 3 times when your commissions were low, putting your emergency dental bill on my card, and paying for that weekend in Vermont when you said you'd get me back when the quarter closes. The quarter closed. I never saw it. He frowned, scanning. You keep track of all that? He asked, half impressed, half horrified. I keep track of where my money goes, I said. It's how I don't end up like my parents. He chewed his lip. I didn't realize it was that much, he admitted. I thought it was more 50-50. Or like 60-40 my way with the bar tabs and stuff. The bar tabs you put on my card? I asked. He winced. Okay, he said. Point taken. He sat back, arms crossed. But that doesn't change how I feel about joint accounts, he added. If anything, it proves my point. Money makes people resentful. Look at you, you love me, but now you've got a whole resentment PowerPoint. I stared at him. Do you hear yourself? I asked. You're basically saying, I don't want transparency, because then you'll see the imbalance. He shrugged. I'm saying, he replied, that I'm more comfortable keeping our finances parallel. It reduces friction. We don't have to know everything about each other's spending. We just agree on who covers what and call it a day. But we haven't agreed, I said. That's the problem. I slid into covering more because you were struggling. I didn't mind. But if we're going to keep living like this, the least we can do is be intentional about it. He looked at me, then at the sheet, then away. I need to think, he said finally. This is a lot. That's fair, I said. I've been thinking about it for months. He grabbed his keys. I'm going for a drive, he said. We'll talk later, when we're both in a better headspace. I watched him walk out, the door clicking softly behind him. I sat there with my laptop open and my heart pounding, the phrase, "What's yours is manageable," echoing in my head. 3 years together. 2 spent living in this apartment. Countless nights I'd soothed him through panic attacks about hitting quota, telling him we were a team. And in his mind, the finish line of team apparently stopped at the edge of his bank app. I stared at the spreadsheet, then opened a new tab. New budget. Solo. What would my life look like without his unpredictable contributions, his "I'll get you next time," his vague promises about future generosity? The numbers surprised me. Rent would be higher on my own, sure. But without buying his excuses, my savings would actually grow faster. For the first time, I asked a question If the behavior fits, I said softly. He slumped back. So what now? He asked. We break up over a bank account. It's not about the account, I said. It's about what it represents, a refusal to share power. Not everything has to be about power, he muttered. Everything about money is, I said. Especially for people like us, who didn't grow up with any. He rubbed his hands over his face. Okay, he said finally. What if we try it your way? A small joint account, just for rent. Rest stays separate. 3-month trial. If we hate it, we go back. There was a time that offer would have made me melt with relief. Look, compromise. He's trying. Now, it felt like rearranging furniture on a cracked foundation. I appreciate the effort, I said. But I don't think the problem is structural. I think it's philosophical. We want different things from together. You want me to hand over control, he said. I want us to share it, I said. And you hear that as loss. We sat in silence for a while. You're really thinking about leaving, he said quietly. I'm thinking about what my life looks like on my own versus with a partner who sees my contributions as manageable, I said. And for the first time, the solo column isn't terrifying. His eyes glistened, unexpectedly. I don't want to lose you, he said. You're the best thing in my life. I just don't know how to not be scared when money gets involved. You see fear and you reach for control, I said. I see fear and I reach for collaboration. That's the gap. He laughed once, humorless. So what? I go to therapy, unpack my dad issues, come back with a certificate that says I'm safe to pull savings? He asked. I go to therapy, I said. You go to therapy.
Separately.
Figure out what we each actually want. Then we decide if those futures line up. He looked at me for a long beat. That sounds like a breakup, he said. It sounds like a crossroads, I replied. Whether that's the end or a reset depends on what we both learn. The next day, I emailed a financial advisor recommended by a coworker. Not the joint team planning kind. A woman who specialized in helping single clients get their footing after divorce or big breakups. We met over Zoom. I showed her my spreadsheet, the one with what I'd contributed, what I earned, what my goals were. You're in a decent position, she said. You just need to stop letting other people's chaos bleed into your plan. I'm not married, I said. Do I really need to think about leaving like I would a divorce? If you're blending your life that much, she said, you're effectively married without the legal protections. Honestly, that's the worst of both worlds. The phrase stuck with me. Effectively married without protections. If things went south, there would be no court to help divide assets, no clear rules. Just feelings and whoever had access to what. In our case, I had the lease and the utilities. He had cash flow and a narrative about autonomy. So, if I decide to go, I asked, I'm not being dramatic. You're being prudent, she said. And you're catching a pattern early before there's a mortgage or kids involved. A week later, I signed a lease on a small 1-bedroom closer to the hospital. It wasn't fancy. The appliances were older, the walls a bland beige. But the rent was lower, the landlord responsive, and the greatest selling point was this. Every name on the paperwork was mine. I didn't tell Jason right away. Not out of sneakiness. Out of self-preservation. I needed to know I had a concrete option before I presented him with the reality. In the meantime, I started quietly unwinding the financial knots. I moved my direct deposit to a new bank. I changed autopays so none of his subscriptions touched my cards. I canceled the fun money credit card we'd both used because the rewards were great and the lines between mine and ours had blurred too much. He noticed eventually. Did my gym payment not go through? He asked one night, frowning at his phone. It says the card was declined. I canceled that card, I said. It was in my name. If you want the points, you can get your own. He blinked.
Wow, he said.
Cold. I'm aligning reality with your philosophy, I said. What's yours is yours. What's mine is mine. His jaw flexed. This is because I wouldn't do a joint account, he said. This is because you told me you don't want me to have power over your money, I said. So, I'm making sure you don't have silent power over mine either. He stared at me for a long beat. You're different, he said. I'm done paying for the privilege of being in your life, I replied. 2 days before my move-out date, I told him. We were doing dishes, a domestic little ritual I realized I'd miss more than him. I signed a lease, I said, rinsing a plate. I'm moving out at the end of the month. The plate slipped from his hands back into the soapy water with a splash. You what? He asked. I'm moving out, I repeated. I'll keep paying my half of the rent until the lease is up. After that, you can renew on your own or find somewhere else. His face went through 3 emotions in quick succession: confusion, hurt, anger. You made this huge decision without telling me? He demanded. I made this huge decision after 3 years of watching you guard your money like a dragon and treat mine like a community resource, I said. I told you we were at a crossroads. This is me picking my road. He leaned against the counter, gripping it like it might move. So you're breaking up with me? He said. Yes, I said. Not because of a joint account. Because our visions of partnership are incompatible. He laughed once, disbelieving. You'd rather be alone than work through this with me, he said. Okay. I'd rather be alone than spend another 3 years subsidizing someone who thinks sharing is a threat, I replied. He shook his head. You're going to regret this when you're 40 and single and still budgeting every latte, he said. I'd regret more waking up at 40 next to someone who still thinks my money is manageable, I said. He was quiet after that. The move happened with less drama than I'd braced for. He helped carry boxes, shoulders tense, jaw set. My mom and a couple of friends showed up with pizza and cheap wine. We loaded my life into a borrowed truck and drove it to my new, slightly shabby haven. Standing in the doorway as I carried the last box in, Jason said, If you change your mind. I shook my head. I'm not changing my mind, I said. You might one day. About what partnership means. I hope, for your sake, you do. But I won't be here waiting to benefit from it. He swallowed, nodded once, and left. A month later, I heard from a mutual friend that he'd gotten a big commission check. He went out and bought a motorcycle, she said, rolling her eyes. Midlife crisis at 32. Good for him, I said, stirring my tea. Less gas money. I didn't begrudge him the splurge. It was his money, earned his way, spent his way. The difference now was that my paycheck, my savings, my careful little line items weren't cushioning him. They were building something for me. In the year that followed, my life didn't magically transform.
I still worked long shifts.
I still muttered at my budget when unexpected expenses. The small wins, paying off a loan, watching my emergency fund hit a new round number, were mine. When I started dating again, I paid attention in a new way. On the 3rd date with someone, I'd listen closely when topics like paying bills or splitting rent came up. One guy joked, I'd love to find someone who's better with money. I can't even keep a houseplant alive. Why should I manage savings? He laughed, waiting for me to join. Because you're an adult, I said. There was no 4th date. Another said, my ex and I kept everything separate. It was easier, less messy. When I asked why, he said, because I didn't want her knowing how much I actually made. I learned to see those statements not as quirks, but as worldviews. Instead of trying to explain why my version made more sense, I simply took note and backed away. Then I went back to my own accounts, my own plans, my own life that I no longer offered as a balancing act for anyone else's debts, fears, or ego. If you're listening to this and someone in your life is telling you, What's mine is mine. What's yours is manageable. Believe them. Believe the hierarchy that sets up their security first, your contributions as padding. Then ask yourself a question too many of us skip. If they're this protective of their resources, why am I so willing to throw mine into a shared pot they won't even acknowledge? My quiet revenge wasn't draining Jason's bank account or exposing his worst habits to everyone we know. It was stepping out of a life where my money bought me less say and building one where every dollar I earn votes for me. He said he didn't see why we needed joint accounts. I said, "You're right. We don't. But that also means we don't need a joint future." And then, for the first time, I spent my savings on something just for me. A life where my worth isn't calculated in how generously I fund